Okay, welcome to the Duskmon Purple Mill Hybrid gameplay guide here. Now we are playing against Millenniumon as our very first matchup, and with our opening hand, this deck is very different because it's very mid-focused in terms of just having level 4s and tamers. That's really the core strategy alongside with a lot of rookies. It's kind of like a rookie rush style kind of deck, and then you have like hybrids that do you like a lot of like crazy combos, and that's pretty sufficient for the deck overall. There's not a lot of top end that I'm running currently, and I'm experimenting mainly with this sort of like the pure mill sort of save version, or like the very pure purple version. And I know there's a lot of actually different ways to actually build this deck. There's also like a control version. There's one that you can also play with loweemon, which I'm not currently. And so there's a lot of ways I'm experimenting. So if you guys want to see the deck profile, make sure to stay tuned for it, because I'll be making constant updates. And if you guys want to see the yellowish version with the Lowy as well, which I'm really interested, let me know in the comments, and we'll definitely look into that as well. Because yeah, purple hybrid is one of my personal favorite archetypes. Duskmon is just incredibly exciting to finally have it in the Digimon card game. But anyways, let's go back to talking about the strategy overall. We just want to see rookies in our opening hands. We want to see rookies. Ideally, it's going to be Ukomon, just because it can really help us cycle very deeply and quickly. And the other card we really want to see is Koichi alongside with Duskmon and Velgrmon. And it's very important that we set up the Velgrmon in trash. Therefore, we have a lot of on deletion, draw one, trash one, or whenever there's an opportunity to trash a card from my hand, we want to put Velgrmon in there, just because with Duskmon we can go into it, and Duskmon's combo is to Digivolve into Velgrmon from the trash. And that's basically the really simple core strategy. You're really just focusing on beating down the opponent as quickly as possible. And yeah, in this particular matchup for Millenniumon, I'd like to say like it might feels like a little bit of a counter matchup for us. It's already pretty tough. They are also a purple based deck, and the fact that we mill actually might help them a lot, because they need to see pieces in their trash as well. And once they have pieces in their trash, they can really like control the board heavy with lots of big strong effects that we can't really do much to sort of play around it. So it's really tough here. But so far it's so good, because it does take them some time, so we can use that opportunity to try to rush them down as quickly as possible, which is why I'm trying to Digivolve and trying to make as many attacks. And I wanted to go into the Duskmon right away, and so that I can go into my Velgrmon and start controlling the board a little bit. Making sure that I'm reading the Chimeramon correctly, it's that whenever it gets deleted, they can go DNA to a Millenniumon, and I noticed that they have a Machinedramon, so chances are they might have a Millenniumon in hand. If they have a Millenniumon in hand, it could be pretty big like turnaround for us. And you guys can see we're kind of milling pieces for them at the same time, which is not really what we want. So in order to play around the Millenniumon potentially coming out, I decided to delete my own Velgrmon to delete their Gizamon, and this is where the Duskmon Inheritable comes in really nicely, which I really always like with the Inheritables, with the whole purple line of this sort of set, is that we can always float a tamer back. This one in particular, Duskmon though, floats any color tamer back from trash, as long as it's 4 costs or less. And this is why I also really like the old mat, because the mat will help you grab the Duskmon back, recycle it back once it's on play, then you can actually go into it all over again. And I decided to pass a little bit more memory on the opponent's side, just to have a Koichi established, because now I can sort of like threaten lethal potentially next turn. Because as long as I have like a way to get into 2 hybrids, I can make possibly 2 attacks, and if I have enough memory to sort of get back. But here they're just going to use their Chimeramon own combo just to, when attacking, delete itself to delete my Digimon, and then there they can still go into Millenniumon easy, no problem. And that is the one thing that I was afraid of in the beginning, because I don't want to give them feed into a free Millenniumon, but it's just so easy for them to get into it thanks to us helping them mill. I probably helped them cycle through the deck and cycle through the pieces and cycle through their combo parts very nicely here. And now there's a Millenniumon that is like massive 14k, making 2 checks and has a redirection, which is going to be really problematic for us now to sort of deal with, and they have a lot of memory to work with. So this could be a pretty big issue for us at the moment, just because of that. Now the whole idea when it comes to, again, playing with this deck, is that we have a lot of option cards. And the thing is, with a lot of our option cards are also deletion based, meaning they can actually get value off of it if we ever attempt to delete their stuff, because their effects are just gonna proc. So keeping the Rivals Barrage and having the Death Slinger is not the greatest. Like, I would usually save it and use it for like the lower end stuff, but once a Chimeramon is on the board, there's a lot of pressure exerted, and it makes it very, very tough. And this is probably one of the reasons why, you know, this is my first time playing against Millenniumon, so I'm not like super familiar with like exactly the matchup and how it goes and how it runs and what exactly ins and outs. But this makes me think like, oh, maybe the yellow sort of control would have a little bit of a better matchup against it, or have an easier time, just because it has a lot more like top end tools. Because with this strategy, it's very linear. But don't get me wrong, like the reason I think a lot of people are playing this sort of like the purple base version, or sort of like the purple engine, like the pure purple, is because it has the speed. It really rushes it down. And when it comes to racing, it can really just like take out your opponents out of nowhere once you're able to gather a bunch of hybrids and chip away with security. But here they get into that second Chimeramon, deleting itself, thanks to having another Machinedramon in the trash where they have tons of to work with. They go into a second Millenniumon, and one of the major counterparts, or not like counterparts, but the major parts that counter against us is the fact that Millenniumon puts our trash back to the top of our deck, meaning our opponent can play around us by forcing us to draw into cards that we just don't want to see. And the major problem also is that they possibly are gonna put the Velgrmon back to the top of our deck, so that we're forced to find a way to trash it all over again. And here we're kind of stuck because we have no more really like cards that can help us draw further. Since we don't Digivolve as much, our draw trash power is somewhat limited in the sense of we can only really draw through Digivolving. We can only really draw off the Demi-Meramon was on deletion. So I'm here trying to sort of dig through it. And this makes it tough now at this point, because with the Wicked God's Descent option card on the board too, I can't really try to remove their Digimon. I don't have enough stuff in trash, which is kind of crazy, you know, for a purple deck like Millenniumon, sort of purple base, but Millenniumon being like black and red, returning opponent's trash back to the top of the deck is actually really good against purple decks like ours here. So this is really tough, because again, I still don't have a Velgrmon, because at least if I have Velgrmon, I'll be like, okay, you know what, it's worth trying to pop that Deltamon there to wipe out the other two Millenniumons. And even if Moon Millennium potentially comes out, it's not the worst thing, because at least I'm getting rid of bodies. But you can see the amount of pressure just by having two Millenniumons there that does 2 checks each again, can redirect attacks twice now, 1 of each, and it's basically kind of over for me, I have to say. And I'm not too sure what I could have done better and played better in the early stages. Maybe you guys can let me know in the comments. Let me know how it's sort of this matchup sort of fares for you guys. And yeah, we're just all, you know, trying to learn and trying to get an understanding how this kind of works. But this is really interesting. But trust me guys, Purple Hybrid is a really strong deck. Even though we don't get this one just yet, we'll get it on the next one. Alright, so in this game, we're going to be playing against Red Hybrid, and I'm going to prove to you guys how this deck is super fast and it can race against one of the fastest decks out there in finishing against the opponents as well. Now, back to our opening hand, we are going second, so this is okay to keep, just because I like to see Ukumons. Ideally, it's actually the Searching Ukumon for the 1 cost, but the main thing, the reason why I kept this hand was that it has the BT7 Koichis. Koichis are this specific one, the 3 cost one, is the ones I want to see the most, because in the early stages, it lets me cycle. I like to play cards, and I want to be able to utilize cards that help me cycle through the deck, whether it's drawing and trashing. These are the most important cards. Cards like also Miss Memory Boost do the same thing as well. And these are those early stuff that help you to dig through deeper your deck, and so that you can set up your trash. And cards that you don't really need are like Rivals Barrage in the early stages, which are also matchup dependent. You might not really need Deathslinger, you might not really need Jackray just yet either, just because of all these cards are sort of dead cards and right in the beginning. So we want to focus more on grabbing more consistency cards. And of course, after all this playtesting guys, I'm going to be optimizing the deck a lot more in the deck profile. So once again, be sure to stay tuned, making more updates and such. But the idea game plan is still the same. We're trying to rush them down and beat them with our rookies, and then eventually we can go for our hybrid combos. And here, it's kind of the same thing applying on their end. They try to chip us down with their rookies, and then they need to get their draw power off of it. So it's a very similar concept of the deck. But then the difference is when it comes to Ancient Greymon, they can build up a stack and just go one shot, bam, take out all of our security, potentially no options either, and blitz Omni or hybrid for game. So I see a really good opportunity right here in this moment. I decided to go into Duskmon, turn the Pokemon into a different color. I chose blue at this moment. So then to ensure that we can mill 3 cards, thanks to having that Burning Gray. And since that Burning Gray was purple anyways, I get to use the end of attack of Velgrmon to delete that and then remove the Boko, really taking advantage of the opponent that the fact that they didn't swing into us, which they probably should have. But you know what? Looking back, even if they did, it wouldn't have mattered. If they did, they could potentially give us a lot more cards in trash to work with, or even give us potential tamers. So that's the whole idea of hybrid decks. When against any decks that kind of chip for damage, we're just gonna gain extra value because having cards in trash for purple is great. Otherwise, if they hit into tamers or options or anything, we're going to gain value off of it, and then we can utilize more resources. And here, this is the moment, is that I'm already pressuring for lethal, which the opponent may not know here. Because the next turn, my plan is to go out, swing the Psych, swing with Velgar, and I have 2 tamers to work with that can still attack. And especially with Matt guaranteeing me at 3 memory at the beginning, I have a lot to work with. I have Jack Rays in my hand that I'm keeping as well, which I can potentially gain memory if I need to cycle through my hybrids. And having this Velgrmon stack with the Duskmon Inheritable is once again the reason why the recursion on this deck is just so efficient and incredibly good. So I'm just going to go ahead and swing ahead. Whether Sightmon gets deleted or not doesn't really matter. It would be nice because I get to cycle through more cards, but I'm going to attack with Velgrmon, and the nice thing is that you can delete itself regardless, even though you don't have to delete your opponent's Digimon. So meaning when I get deleted, this is why the BT7 Koichi is so good, because I get to gain a memory back. And by gaining that memory back, I play a Mat back. A Mat will grab me another Duskmon back, and I get to repeat and do the same, attack and mill a bit more. Thanks to Deathslinger, I gain a memory, but I can still do that with Jack Raid anyways, and I finish off the game. This game we're facing off against Duskmon, which is really cool because we can finally see it as a full own deck, full yellow, but alongside with Duskmon X, and the Ace, and getting all that full package support is going to be really cool, nice to see. When it comes to this matchup, Duskmon can be a little bit tricky because we do chip a lot, but the thing is, Duskmon really thrives from having lower security count, and they're kind of like unkillable because they keep on constantly able to recover. At the end of the turn with Dynus X, if they potentially play the older Dynus, they can constantly just like add security back to back, and it's gonna force us to have to make even more attacks than normal in order to punch through their defense. And the thing is, they have good control, they have blockers as well, DP reduction potential, you know, raid removal, they have a lot of crazy stuff too, and they also have protection. So this can be a little bit tricky when it comes to this matchup, but I'm confident that, you know, with our speed and, you know, by setting cards up fast enough, eventually we should be able to chip them as quickly as possible, take them down, and just basically keep punching and punching and punching and attacking. So with our opening hand earlier, with all the cards that we have, it's nice to have miss memory boosts because these cards help us set up the trash. We potentially draw a card so we can kind of like fetch for pieces. And in this particular matchup, having Rival's Barrage isn't bad either, because if they utilize their protection once already, we can try to use Velgrmon combo to delete their stack or delete their Digimon, and if they protect it once, then we can follow up with a Rival's Barrage, and I know they can possibly be playing a Duskmon Ace as well, so that can give us Ace Overflow. So that's what some of the cards I'm actually might consider keeping as I'm sort of playing and not just trashing it right away. But still, the most important thing is to try to trash away like other top end cards like the Mervamon, which I actually don't necessarily need because that's a card that I can cycle back later on, and I'll tell you guys a very specific reason why the Mervamon sort of being played as well at the same time. But like we always know the main combo, we need to set up Velgrmon in the trash, and I see a Wizardmon out here. I'm just gonna go ahead and try to delete it right away. I'm gonna turn it to purple, and with Velgrmon's effect, we can delete any Digimon as long as it's purple for lower to delete the rest of the opponent's Digimon, and we get to mill 2 because it does count for tamers as well. So they have a yellow tamer, Wizardmon being purple, but from us changing it, so Velgrmon goes really big. Now, once again, just addressing the Velgrmon, you guys will see in the very end, very soon enough, why we play that card in particular. That is actually my top end choice, but it's really not like a main core strategy. Unlike most Velgrmon decks that you guys might be familiar with in previous formats and history, such as Crossheart or even Purple Rush, it's very, very different. We are not really trying to like Digicross that much. You know, it's really just a bonus, nice sort of to have package, which I'll talk about more in the deck profile when we get into it as well. But here it's really, again, just focusing on a very linear, simple strategy. Velgrmon has fantastic removal, which can just delete almost anything. And then we're just going to try to continue to attack and keep our tamers afloat as much as possible, and making sure that we have tamers to resources to sort of work with. The cool thing with like Duskmon is that like as they're trashing their own security, they gain bonus effects as well, such as the Kari right there to security minus potentially. They get to recover and set up like specific options in there. And finally, Duskmon X comes out. Now I noticed that they're actually missing Protoform or some sort of X antibody or even just a regular Dynus underneath, because otherwise they'll be gaining a lot of value and they can get the maximum stack of the optimal way to have Duskmon. But we're going to continue to chip away. We know they're blockers, but the thing is like, even if they block, we can continue to attack. You know, again, with the Velgrmon combo, we're going to turn it into like whatever color Digimon. That's one color, and then we at least get to continue to trash. We are 11k, so they can decide to block here or not. And they actually let it through because they wanted to delete the Gabu. And then the thing is, we're going to actually threaten them to try and delete their stack either way, to force them to use the protection. So the idea is I'm going to delete myself, and of course they're going to protect it because they want to keep the blocker alive on the board as much as possible. Having the Skobaluki unsuspending effect is also really good, just because they can block multiple times per turn like that. So then here, what I'm trying to do is showcasing you guys potentially that's how we can utilize Velgrmon. Now the deck cycles through itself so quickly, and you mill yourself so quickly and setting up the trash. You guys can see like we can use Jack Race to gain memory, and having the missed memory boost, you sort of save it for the late game stages. And this is this perfect moment because now I have enough memory. You're going to gain a lot out of all this. And then we're going to Digicross with Velgrmon. Now, normally we'll put Ignite underneath, but we're not going to do that because we want to play out the Ignite so that both our Ignite and Velgrmon can swing for game and delete the stack. Okay, so we got a bonus game, so we're going to take up the challenge and try to face off probably one of the best decks from the previous formats, and probably still currently one of the best decks of the format. My personal favorite, Imperial. I really want to see how this matchup goes, just because the Purple Hybrid has a lot of high expectations when it comes to it. So let's go right into it anyways. We're starting first, and the most ideal turn 1 play is always the Uko 1 cost. Put the opponent to 1 memory, give them as little to work with as possible, and then we just immediately get to cycle. And thanks to having Koichi, love it, because that helps us set up the tamer as soon as possible here. The only thing I'm just sort of missing is a secondary rookie, because then I'll be able to sort of like push out, and that'll be really nice to gain like even more upper hand and value advantage. And it might be a small thing, but it's actually pretty huge in this matchup, because when it comes to Imperial, it's all about for them to set up pieces and finding their tamers. And once they find all of it, such as this chip, which is really, really unfortunate for us, we really need to beat them down as quickly as possible, because they have all the tools that can counter us, which makes this matchup incredibly difficult. Naturally, blue decks are just really good against purple decks, such as this one in particular, and that rookie could have mattered a lot, because what it could have given me was like extra momentum, pace, extra attack, and that could have meant everything, because I need to do as much as possible to chip them bit by bit as quickly as possible and to rush them down. That's pretty much the whole strategy of this deck, as you guys know anyways. It's kind of like Rookie Rush and all that, and just rinse and repeating the same thing. But the other reason is because like Dragon Mode is really good against us, because with our Duskmon combo going to Velgrmon, we are Digivolving via an effect. Fighter Mode Ace can bottom deck us so we don't get any on deletion effects. Paladin Mode Ace can bottom deck our entire trash, and we are forced to play all over again. And with all of that, they still have the aggression attacks with Velgrmon as well. They did forget to unsuspend here to make a second attack, but it really doesn't matter, because they probably just didn't want to attack anyways, because they didn't want to give us potential value. And bottom decking our tamers because of Hexablaumon being such a good card. Man, this is incredibly rough, and it's really, really tough, but there are some ins and outs. There is a little bit of opportunities to try to play out of this. Like at first I thought it's basically all over. There's just absolutely no hope because never ever in our deck will it be able to build a stack big enough to even remove the Hexablow, and yet alone we're not able to suspend. We can't. That means we can't attack. If we can't attack, we can't use our deletion effects to remove it. Sure, Hexablowmon has no protection, but if we can't suspend and we can't do our effects, it just doesn't matter. So I'm thinking really hard here. I can't push up the Goblimon. I can, but I just can't attack with it. So what's the point? I can't really build all the way up either. I was thinking, okay, maybe one of my ways was to like slide Digivolve Duskmon on top of Velgrmon non-stop of each other and then maybe go big enough as a stack, but it's not enough. It's not enough because our stack just can't go that big. I mean, it can, but even so, we don't have enough time. We're on a ticking time bomb right now in the moment. And the whole thing is, I was gonna say, like, yeah, chipping at them and giving them value is really neg for us, and it's really a little bit of a luck based that part of it when it comes to this deck. Usually you have to strategize and play around it and try not to give them the tamers, but as the purple hybrid deck, like I mentioned, you have to rush and try to chip them. If you don't chip them, you're not proceeding to your win condition. So it really comes down to the matter of like how it comes out in the security sometimes. So here I managed to find a way. I managed to actually gain a lot of memory thanks to the missed memory boost, and I was able to actually wanting to use the double jack raid to gain 1 memory each and actually use Rival's Barrage to delete their Hexablow. So then we can still keep turn, and even with Partition, I was actually wanted to mention and showcase that Partition may not be the biggest problem for this deck just because we have this sort of like method to play around it and remove it. It would be nice if we had a Death Slinger that can go up to like level 6s, but you know, we haven't really milled enough just yet either because we haven't really done that combo just yet. But that's one way to at least get rid of that Hexablow, and we're actually finally free. And here we can just reset up all over again. But you guys can see again, having that one rookie short there, that momentum could have meant everything. But I'm not going to dwell too much on it because at this moment, all I can really hope for is that they don't have the rest of the pieces to gather. But honestly, if they were able to DNA once and get it going, they can draw so much and they can just cycle so much through their deck, and they're probably holding half their deck or a quarter of their deck in their hand at this moment, using the Wormmon to go through pieces back in the trash as well. Having the Sting is just fine because that means they go into another pile, and that means we have to sort of like bank on security a little bit of potentially 2 jack raids or at least some form of removal to force them to DNA again only if they have it. Unfortunately, we don't have it, so they got game instead. Don't forget to grab the Spirit Transcendence collection on the AVAULT store right now as we have limited quantities. As always, thank you so much for watching. You guys have a great day, great night, wherever you are. See you next video, and this is AVAULT signing